Welcome back, my friends, to TFT Hyperroll with Autarch and Take 25 and trying to explain what this video is. It's broken down into a few parts. In the first part, I want to go over how many people are actually playing Hyperroll versus regular TFT so you can get an idea of why Hyperroll has the problems that it has. There's going to be math involved, but don't worry, it's pretty simple and you'll see it when it comes by. Part 2 is I'm asking for a little bit of help from you guys to try to figure out what I can do next. And number 3 is an idea I have, but I don't know how I'm going to make it work. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to look at the 3 different types of TFT, ranked, Hyperroll, and double up, and figure out how many people are playing them on the Brazilian server. The reason I chose the Brazilian server is it's going to be pretty easy to figure out those numbers from the information we get at lolchess.gg, which is a pretty good site to track this information. Now here's where the math part comes in. There's a formula I learned in high school, maybe you did or didn't. It's percent over 100 equals is over of. And this basically says if you have 2 pieces of this information, you can figure out the third. With what we are doing here, we're going to know the percentage of players who have reached a certain level, and then the total number of players who have reached that level. And from that, we can derive the total number of people playing on that server. So let me show you how that would work. First, we find out what percentage of the people are Challenger, 0.02%. So 0.02% of the players are Challenger. Then, how many people have reached Challenger? Remember, this is just for the Brazilian server. There are 50 total people who have reached Challenger on the Brazilian server. Now let's hop over to the chalkboard and put in what we know. 0.02 is the percentage, so we put that over 100. Then we know that that is 50 of some unknown number, which then becomes X. When we solve for X, that will tell us the total number of people playing ranked TFT on the Brazilian server. And since we are no good rotten cheaters, we're going to let ChatGPT do the actual math for us rather than having me explain it. But you can do it for yourself if you really want to. It's just a matter of simplifying the equation, solving for X, and you get that there are approximately 250,000 people playing ranked TFT on the Brazilian server. Now let's hop over to double up and get the same information. Challenger, 0.03% of people have reached the Challenger level. How many total in Challenger? Well, it's 28 total. Back to the chalkboard, we have 0.03%, which goes over 100, and then we know that that is 28 of some other number. And you guessed it, back to ChatGPT so it can do the actual mathing for us, and it will tell us that there are approximately 93,333 people playing double up on the Brazilian server. So okay, why do we care about this? And here is why. Hyperroll, the Brazilian server, approximately 9.03% have reached hyper tier. So then the question becomes, how many people total are there in hyper tier? Now, because there's more than 100, we scroll down to the bottom and then kick over to the last page. And we'll see if this goes over 1,000, then we can't calculate. But if it's under 1,000, which it happens to be, we will know there are 963 total people in hyper tier, and that represents approximately 9.03% of the total playing base. So chalkboard, 9.03 over 100 equals 963 of some unknown number. ChatGPT, are you here? And I'm guessing some people just figured out where this is going. ChatGPT is going to do the math for us, simplify the equation, and come up with a final count of 10,661 people playing Hyperroll on the Brazilian server. That means that Hyperroll has approximately 4% the amount of players as ranked TFT. I've been making TFT Hyperroll videos since Set 5 when it first came out, and it quickly became my favorite play mode, and also one I can make videos for reasons we've discussed a million times. But Hyperroll as we know it is currently in trouble. I've been tracking these numbers in various seasons, checking in, and it usually did okay compared to other game modes, but not 4%. And I had originally run these numbers about a month ago when there were less than 1,000 hyper tier players in North America, and I was able to calculate that it was similarly around 11 to 12,000 Hyperroll players compared to 650,000 ranked TFT players in NA, which meant on my server it was only between 1 and 2% of people actually playing Hyperroll as opposed to ranked TFT. Now, I started this particular channel with set 7.5, but I have been noticing that with each passing set, the number of views have been dropping even as the number of subscribers to the channel is increasing. It shouldn't happen like that unless less people are now playing Hyperroll than they used to, which I can confirm, yeah, that's the case. So what does all of this mean? Well, the reality is when something doesn't get done for Hyperroll, it's simply because it's not popular enough. This is why we see so many bugs and things that carry on for patches and patches and patches and don't get fixed. It's because there's simply not enough people for them to dedicate resources to. I understand it financially, but it has now left me a little stuck. There's only 4 or 5 viable Hyperroll builds. And a lot of that is because in order to keep builds viable for TFT, they end up broken in Hyperroll. This is back to the Yordle problem from many seasons ago, because when Yordles was nerfed into non-existence in TFT, regular ranked, it was still strong in Hyperroll. When they made it actually usable in regular TFT, it became so dominant in Hyperroll, half the matches came down to Yordles versus Yordles versus Yordles by the end. But okay, I've been through this before. Now I need to ask you something, because here's where I'm stuck. There's only a few builds that are really viable, and I have done them all multiple times. I've done Can You Force It? I've done lots of different things with these builds, and while every once in a while I can come up with a crazy ending or maybe get a wild augment like Wandering Trainer and do something different, for the most part, I feel like I'm doing the same video over and over and over again. So, what would you like to see? Please offer some suggestions in the comments below for either builds that I can try to do that would be interesting in Hyperroll, not ranked builds, they don't translate over, or something else I can do within the world of Hyperroll that you might want to see. Second, and this is a wild shot in the dark, way back when in the long ago when Hyperroll was much more popular and I used to get more views and have more visitors to the live, I had talked about trying to do some kind of Hyperroll tournament. But they didn't have a spectator mode back then, so it would have been almost impossible to do, as I would have had to have been in the match as a dead player just watching everyone else play out, which really wouldn't have been fair. Now, they've added a spectator part. But I fear there is about 0 chance of being able to get enough people to make a tournament work properly. In a perfect world, you have 64 people, so you can do 8 sets of matches and then narrow it down to 8 people who make it into the finals. You get it. But I'm not sure we can find 64 people who'd want to participate, or that we can organize in a way that we could all play at around near the same time. Not all 64 at the same time, we could do it in groups, but still, yeah. Comments below if that's something you're interested in, then maybe we can see what we can put together, and maybe I can write someone over at Riot and see if we can get a prize for it, even if it's a nominal amount of RP. It would be cool, but without a real interest list, I have absolutely nothing to goal for. But okay, that's the video. To summarize, Hyperroll, very few players compared to ranked TFT, and I mean very few. 2, any ideas for videos? And 3, anyone interested in a Hyperroll tournament? Thank you. Hope you enjoyed this little rant, I guess we call it, and have an absolutely awesome day.